In court, you was trying to say something.
Uh, I'm very sorry. You know, I know that is not even enough. You know, tell you my side. You know, I know regardless. But you do deserve that. And to be honest with you, it's sad, but you deserve that. You know, um, I was going through things with my wife. We was already planning a divorce, right? Um, Met Kamaya because we was in the same platoon, you know, and you know, me and her liked each other. We started messing around, and she was telling me she wasn't happy. Now, we didn't discuss. Well, I'll step by step. Me and her was messing with each other heavily. We liked each other heavily, you know. And when we got to Korea, it was probably like the the fourth month that we was there, and we was updating our life insurances. And when we did so, we went back to the barracks, and me and her is in there, we in my room, and she brought it up. She goes, "So is your wife on the life insurance?" And I was like, "Nah, it's my mom." And she was like, "Okay." She was like, "Yeah, I'm on ties." I was like, "Okay," you know what I'm saying? And she was just like, "Yeah, you know what I'll do with 400,000?" I was like, "Man, there's a whole bunch of shit you can do with 400,000." And she was like, "Yeah, I'll pay off the house," you know what I'm saying, stuff like that. I was like, "True, I'll probably just give me a bike." I don't know. I was whatever with it. And she was just like, "Yeah, 400,000 would be nice." And I was like, and then she said it again. I was like, "Damn, you talking like you would want him to die, like you want an accident to happen." And she sat there and she looked at me and she was like, "What's up?" At that moment, man, I should have been like, "Bitch, you crazy," but man, sir, like, I really opened up to her. I really did. What I wanted, a family, because my family, my mom and dad, this is a whole bunch. I opened up to her. I wanted different. And she knew all that. She was the first woman that I opened up to. I didn't even really open up to my wife because me and her past was bad, you know. Um, so at that moment, I was just like, "You cap." And she was like, "No, I'm for real. I ain't gonna cap, man. Sir, I was in love with her, you know. Honestly, I was blind. Like, I was blinded. I thought that was love, you know what I'm saying?
A young Army sergeant trusted two people with his life, his wife and his fellow soldier. On New Year's Eve 2018, both of them betrayed him for $400,000. One pulled the trigger, the other made the call to 911, pretending to be devastated. What you're about to hear will make you question everyone you trust. Hit subscribe now, because this story gets worse than you think. This is the story of Tyrone Hassel III. He was 23 years old, an Army sergeant stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia. On New Year's Eve, 2018, he was home on leave in Michigan, spending time with his family. He thought he was safe. He thought he was loved. But this murder took 4 attempts to complete. Drop a bell emoji in the comments if you've ever had someone close to you betray your trust. Because what happened to Tyrone will stay with you. Tyrone Hassel was the kind of soldier the Army dreams about. He served with the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division. His fellow soldiers respected him. His superiors trusted him. He was reliable, dedicated, and had his whole life ahead of him. But someone at his own base, someone who wore the same uniform, someone who took the same oath, was planning his death. Tyrone was married to Kemia Hassel. She was also active duty, serving alongside him in the military. They had a son together, a little boy who was almost 2 years old. This was supposed to be a happy time for their family. For the holidays, Tyrone had planned to take leave and visit his father's house in St. Joseph Township, Michigan. It was going to be a quiet New Year's Eve with the people he loved most. His wife, his son, his father, all together under one roof. Comment below and tell me about your favorite family holiday memory, because for Tyrone, this holiday was going to be his last. But in the weeks leading up to this trip, Kemia had been acting differently. She'd been asking questions about military benefits, about what would happen if something happened to Tyrone. She seemed particularly interested in his life insurance policy. $400,000. That's what Tyrone's life was worth on paper. $400,000 that would go to his wife if he died in the line of duty, or anywhere else. Tyrone didn't think much of these conversations. Why would he? This was his wife, the mother of his child. He trusted her completely. Little did Tyrone know, someone was already in Michigan, waiting for him. Later that evening, Tyrone stepped outside into the driveway. It was cold, quiet, the kind of peaceful winter night where you can hear everything. Then came the gunshots. Multiple shots, fired in rapid succession. The sound shattered the silence of New Year's Eve. Inside the house, Kemia immediately called 911. You can hear the panic in her voice as she says, "I need help. My husband was shot." She sounds devastated. She sounds like a wife who just witnessed something horrible. Police arrived within minutes. They found Tyrone in the driveway, shot multiple times. It looked like a robbery gone wrong, maybe a random act of violence. But investigators immediately noticed something wrong with this scene. Here's what didn't make sense. Tyrone's wallet was still in his pocket. His watch was still on his wrist. His car keys, his phone, everything valuable was still there. If this was a robbery, the thief didn't take anything. Police immediately ruled out robbery. So what was the motive? A neighbor came forward with something interesting. They had seen a man running from the scene, getting into a black car and speeding away. This wasn't random. Someone had come here specifically to kill Tyrone Hassel. What would you do if you heard gunshots next door? Would you look outside? Would you call the police? Let me know in the comments. As investigators collected evidence and interviewed witnesses, they started putting together a timeline. They started building a case. But they had no idea they were looking at a perfectly executed plan that took weeks to organize. For 11 days, police had no leads, no suspects, no clear motive. The case was going cold. Then, on January 11th, they received a phone call that changed everything. An anonymous caller contacted the police with information about Tyrone's murder. The caller said this wasn't random. This was a murder-for-hire plot. The caller gave them two names, Kemia Hassel and Jeremy Cuellar. Kemia Hassel, Tyrone's wife, the woman who called 911, the woman who seemed so devastated by her husband's death, and Jeremy Cuellar, a name investigators had never heard before. Here's what made this revelation so shocking. Both suspects were active duty soldiers. So who was Jeremy Cuellar? He was 24 years old, and here's what makes this case so twisted. He served in the same unit as Tyrone at Fort Stewart. They worked together. They trusted each other. They were supposed to be brothers in arms. Cuellar met Kemia on base. They started talking, then texting, then meeting in secret. The affair had been going on for months, while Tyrone was completely unaware. His own wife was cheating on him with his fellow soldier. But this wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't about love or jealousy. Wait until you hear how calculated this really was. When police questioned Kemia, she eventually admitted the truth. She said she was unhappy in her marriage to Tyrone. She wanted out. But here's the thing that will make your blood run cold. She told investigators she could not get a divorce because she wanted the life insurance money. Think about that for a moment. She didn't want to leave her husband and start over. She wanted him dead so she could collect $400,000. That's what a military life insurance policy pays out when a service member dies. $400,000, tax-free, paid directly to the beneficiary, which was Kemia. How much money would make someone you know betray you? How much would it take for someone close to you to plan your death? Comment your thoughts below, because this number might surprise you. But here's what police didn't know yet. Cuellar had tried to kill Tyrone 3 times before. Kemia and Cuellar thought they were being smart. They used Snapchat to plan the murder because they believed the messages would disappear automatically. No evidence, no paper trail, no way to trace their conversations. They were wrong. Here's the irony. Those messages that were supposed to vanish forever, investigators recovered them anyway. Every text, every photo, every detail of their plan was sitting right there in their phones. But it wasn't just the messages. Police also found location tracking data. They could see exactly where Cuellar had been, when he traveled, how many times he made the trip from Georgia to Michigan. Technology gave them a complete timeline of the conspiracy. Between December 19th and December 31st, 2018, Jeremy Cuellar made 4 separate trips to Michigan. 4 attempts to murder Tyrone Hassel. Attempt number 1, Cuellar lost his nerve. He got to Michigan, he had the opportunity, but he couldn't go through with it. He went back to Georgia empty-handed. Attempt number 2, wrong timing. Tyrone wasn't where he was supposed to be. Cuellar had to abort the mission and try again later. Attempt number 3, there were witnesses around. Too many people who might see him. Too risky. He backed off and waited for a better opportunity. Attempt number 4, New Year's Eve. This time, everything lined up perfectly. This time, he didn't hesitate. What do you think stopped him the first 3 times? Was it conscience? Was it fear of getting caught? Let me know what you think in the comments. When Jeremy Cuellar finally confessed, he told investigators something that will haunt you. He said, "I choked and it took multiple attempts." Think about what that means. He shot Tyrone multiple times, but Tyrone was still alive, so Cuellar had to keep shooting. He had to walk closer. He had to look this young father in the eyes and fire again. The final shot was to Tyrone's head, to make sure he was dead, to finish what he started. Later, in a jailhouse conversation with Tyrone's father, Cuellar repeated those same words. "I choked, and it took multiple attempts." He was talking to the father of the man he murdered, describing how difficult it was to kill his son. Imagine being that father. Imagine having to hear those details from your son's killer. But the evidence was about to get even more damning. Investigators started building their case piece by piece. Phone records showed constant communication between Kemia and Cuellar. Text messages, calls, location data. Everything pointed to a coordinated plan. They found travel receipts showing Cuellar's trips to Michigan. Hotel records proved he was in the area during each attempt. Gas station receipts traced his route from Georgia to Michigan and back. The paper trail was overwhelming. Remember that anonymous tip that broke the case wide open? Investigators later learned it came from someone who knew both Kemia and Cuellar. Someone who couldn't stay silent about what they knew. As the evidence mounted, Kemia's story started changing. First, she knew nothing. Then, she admitted to being unhappy in her marriage. Finally, she confessed to her role in planning Tyrone's murder. On January 11, 2019, exactly 11 days after Tyrone's murder, police arrested both Kemia Hassel and Jeremy Cuellar. Kemia was charged with first-degree premeditated murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Cuellar faced first-degree murder charges and a felony firearm count. When the news broke, it sent shockwaves through the media. A military wife and her lover, both active-duty soldiers, conspiring to murder her husband for insurance money. It was the kind of story that made national headlines. But the reaction at Fort Stewart was different. This wasn't just a news story for them. These were their fellow soldiers, people they worked with, people they trusted. The entire base community was reeling from the betrayal.
It was bad. Like the news spread it fast. Everybody was crying and screaming and falling everywhere. But I feel like I owe it to my son. He made me a proud father. He just did everything that he needed to do and was so successful. I feel like I want everybody to know about him. So I won't ever stop talking about it. Yeah, when you come from where we come from, you just don't have a child that succeeds to that level. Definitely.
Months leading up to trial, investigators obtained something that would seal Camilla's fate, a videotaped confession. In this recording, Camilla admitted to her role in planning Tyrone's murder. But here's what made it even worse. She explained how she helped Cuellar by providing real-time updates about Tyrone's location. She was texting her lover, telling him exactly where her husband was, exactly when he would be vulnerable. She was the inside source. The person Tyrone trusted most in the world was feeding information to his killer. But would a jury believe that a wife could be this cold-blooded? In July 2019, Camilla Hassel's trial began. The prosecution laid out their case methodically, piece by piece. They showed the jury the Snapchat messages between Camilla and Cuellar. They presented the travel records, proving Cuellar's multiple trips to Michigan. They played the videotaped confession where Camilla admitted to planning her husband's murder. The evidence was overwhelming. Phone records, location data, witness testimony, everything pointed to a calculated conspiracy to kill Tyrone for money. Camilla had a choice. She could testify in her own defense, try to explain her actions, maybe show some remorse. Instead, she chose to remain silent. She never took the stand. The jury deliberated for hours. They had to decide whether a wife and mother could really be capable of orchestrating her husband's murder. The verdict came back, guilty on all counts. Camilla Hassel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She will never be free again. Jeremy Cuellar took a different path. He accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 65 to 90 years in prison. Even with the possibility of parole, he'll likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. During the sentencing hearing, Tyrone's family had the chance to speak. His mother stood up in that courtroom and looked directly at Camilla. She told her, "I hope you spend every day suffering behind bars for the rest of your life." The military community at Fort Stewart watched these sentences with a mixture of relief and sadness. Justice had been served, but it couldn't bring back the young soldier who trusted the wrong people. This case sent shockwaves through the entire military community. It wasn't just about one murder. It was about trust. How do you serve alongside someone when you know that people you trust completely might be planning your death? The case also sparked discussions about military life insurance policies. Some people questioned whether $400,000 was too much of a temptation. Others argued that service members deserve substantial coverage because of the risks they face. But here's the thing. No amount of money should be worth a human life. No insurance policy should be motivation for murder. Do you think the sentences were fair? Life without parole for Camilla, 65 to 90 years for Cuellar? Let me know what you think in the comments below. The murder of Tyrone Hassel III reveals something terrifying about trust. The people closest to us, our spouses, our colleagues, our friends. These are the people who have the power to hurt us most. Military families face special vulnerabilities. They're separated by deployments. They deal with stress, with dangerous assignments, with the constant possibility of loss. They need to trust each other completely to survive. When that trust is broken, the consequences are devastating. Unfortunately, this isn't the only case like this. There have been other military spouses who killed for insurance money. Other affairs that turned deadly. Other soldiers who betrayed their brothers in arms. But let's not end this story focused on the evil that took Tyrone's life. Let's remember him for who he was. A dedicated soldier, a loving father, a young man with his whole future ahead of him. Tyrone Hassel III served his country with honor. He deserved better than the betrayal he received. If this case made you think about trust, about loyalty, about the people in your own life, please subscribe for more true crime cases. Ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Comment below and tell me which case you want me to cover next. And if this story affected you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for watching. And remember, the people we trust most have the power to protect us or destroy us. Choose wisely who you give that power to.